Hello everybody and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clips. Lots of stuff to cover with you today. Remember that we post these videos also on BitChute and on Parler, and sometimes that is an alternative place to find a video that you're looking for. And I have a happy announcement. The book that I just co-authored with Shane Pryor, COVID Operation, What Happened, Why It Happened, and What's Next, will be available very soon. We're in the final stages of getting those books ready, and it will be available on e-readers and all e-readers, and posted on Amazon. You can order the books autographed from us, and so on and so on. So really excited about that. So watch for postings on Facebook, and probably next week I'll have more of a definitive timeline I can give you in the videos that I put up next week. Those of you who are excited about our landmark lawsuit in Ohio have two opportunities to meet our attorney Tom Renz. One is today at noon. He will be doing this by teleconference, and then on Sunday of this week, Sunday, October 11th at 7 p.m. by teleconference. We'd like a suggested donation of $25 for legal fees. This is a very expensive thing that we're doing here, which has the opportunity to potentially impact everybody in the country. And I know a lot of you are anxious to file similar lawsuits in your state too. We have to go about this in some organized, methodical way, or we'll just have complete chaos. So please be patient with us, and we'll get to you as soon as we possibly can. But if you would like to participate in these conference calls with Tom Renz, our attorney, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. He will present to you some details of the case that you might find really interesting, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask questions and learn more about how this could potentially benefit all of us in terms of all of this COVID situation that's going on. So a couple other things I'll mention to you. The chronic fatigue course starts today. Cancer 201 alternative treatments is just going to be ongoing till the end of my days, I think. I had originally scheduled 4 lectures, and I filmed all the stuff that was in those original 8 hours of classes that we did. So it's on a video platform, but I'm continuing to create lectures. I've scheduled 3 more classes, and I'll just keep scheduling classes, and we're not raising the price right now. So the cost of this Cancer 201 class is $595, and it really should be like a couple $1,000s, and I'm not raising the price. So if you want to take it now, I'm going to raise the price next year for sure, because if it ends up being, it is going to end up being 30 or 40 lectures. We're not going to do that for such a small amount of money. And we do have this new Cancer Concierge program that involves conference calls and the Cancer 101 and 201 program, and meetings with our dietitians and that sort of thing. So if all of that interests you, please contact me at pampopper@msn.com. So I wanted to talk about data, and I have a lot of data that I've gotten from the Centers for Disease Control, the Ohio Department of Health, the World Health Organization. I think it's really, really important that we report data that comes from those sources that are approved by our authorities. So I want to talk about the distribution of COVID cases and why we should maybe be taking a different look at the types of restrictions and how we're evaluating. And I don't think there's enough of this type of analysis going on. This came from a variety of different sources, but the bottom line is that it all came from CDC, the state departments of health, and that sort of thing. So one of the things that we see is that if you look at a map of the United States, you see, we can call them hot spots, or we can call them whatever we want to call them, but you've got COVID deaths that are concentrated in certain areas. But if you spread it out, if you're dealing with this as like the whole, then you end up with restrictions in places where you don't need them, and etc. So state level figures sometimes don't really differentiate between counties where there's a lot of activity versus counties where there isn't. So on September 15th, that's the date that this analysis was done, the 30 counties with the most COVID-19 deaths throughout the United States, so 30 counties, accounted for 26% of the cases and 40% of the deaths. Now, there are thousands of counties in the United States, so you're talking about 30 counties that accounted for 26% of the cases and 40% of the deaths, much greater than those counties' share of the population, which was only 18.4%. So 1% of the counties in the United States, representing 18% of the population, are responsible for half of the COVID deaths. So it seems that one of the things we might want to be doing is paying more attention to actually where the deaths are as a means of determining public health policy, we could learn a lot more that way. And one of the goals of public health should be to gather knowledge about the distribution of disease, causes, containment, and all that sort of thing. So I think we could do a better job of that. 60.6% of all counties in the United States are reporting 10 or fewer deaths, and they represent 13.1% of the population. 13.1% of the population, 2.7% of the COVID deaths. And I know when I recite numbers, it becomes really difficult sometimes to follow. But what we have is small number of counties, big number of deaths. Then we have 60% of the counties that have a really tiny number of deaths. The 5 counties with the most COVID deaths represent just 0.2% of all counties, but 16% of the deaths. A list of the 50 counties with the most deaths, it hasn't changed very much since April. For example, New York has reported 32,745 deaths as of September 15th, and it has an outsized influence on everything ranging from the state of New York to all of the counties in the United States. So the bottom line is, if you started extracting these counties where you had, and cities where you had an extraordinary number of deaths, first of all, you would concentrate your efforts in finding, from a public health perspective, what the heck happened in those areas, what went wrong, what policies need to be changed. And we could actually learn something from this in terms of who's culpable, who did what right and what wrong, and all that sort of thing. So anyway, New York had an outsized, New York City had an outsized effect on New York State's data, and then the whole country. And so I don't want to just recite more data to you. The point that I wanted to make by citing just those numbers is that, and I've said this before on this channel, everything has to be taken in context. And sometimes numbers can sound very, very scary until you start looking at things contextually. And in the case of this situation, there are a lot of places in the country where probably we didn't really need to do much in the way of mitigation at all, and some other places in the country where we need to figure out what happened there that caused all of this, including even what's listed on death certificates and things of that nature. One thing I wanted to mention, because this is something that is a great source of misunderstanding, is the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said last week it erroneously posted guidance saying that the coronavirus spreads through airborne particles that can remain suspended in the air and travel beyond 6 feet. And this is a quote from the Centers for Disease Control's website. A draft version of proposed changes to these recommendations was posted in error to the agency's official website, the CDC said Monday. CDC is currently updating its recommendations regarding airborne transmission of SARS-CoV-2. Once this process has been completed, the updated language will be posted. And earlier the same day, the World Health Organization made the same correction. And of course, this has a lot to do with the fear factor, people being afraid that even being far apart from humans is going to cause a problem. But actually, the World Health Organization said there is still, quote, no definitive evidence that indicates the virus is spreading widely by air. So hopefully some people will take that to heart. Now, one of the things that I have always suggested to people is that they should look into the things that I talk about, or you hear anybody talking about on YouTube or any of the social media sites, Facebook. Don't take people's word for it. And so a lot of you email me and you want sources, and we get hundreds of those a day, and I really wish we could put a second story on the building and just fill it with people to answer that, but that's not practical. So instead you have to check things out for yourself. So I'm going to read to you what happened when a person who lived in Ohio decided to check out for himself when I was talking about a director's order from the Ohio Department of Health that talked about non-congregate sheltering to be utilized throughout Ohio. This is the director's second amended order. This came from the state of Ohio Department of Health. I want to emphasize that. And one of the things that this says, and I'm reading you right from the order here, Sheltering specific populations in non-congregate shelters should be determined by a local public health official's direction or guidance and should be based on individual needs. Okay? Sheltering specific populations in non-congregate shelters should be determined by a local public health official's direction and guidance and based on individual needs. Now, I think that that's fairly clear. I don't need to explain it to you. So here's what my YouTube subscriber says. After hearing your video on the possibility of Ohioans being put in non-congregate settings because of exposure to the virus, I decided to call the governor's office. Of course, I was unable to speak with the governor, but I did leave a message with him and others in his administration expressing my concern over this. To my surprise, I did hear back from Alan Giles. I wasn't around when he called, so he left a message. In his message, I was informed that Ohio public health officials have the authority to place Ohioans exposed to the virus in non-congregate settings without their permission was nothing but internet rumor. He also urged me to tell those I come in contact with that this was all rumor. A couple of days later, I was able to access the document regarding this issue that was signed on August 31st by Governor DeWine. The order did indeed give OPH officials the authority to place those exposed to the virus in non-congregate settings at their direction or guidance, and I just read to you. So somebody from the governor's office instructed this person to say that this was internet rumor and to make sure to tell the others. Upon reading this information firsthand, I called Mr. Giles, who had left his cell phone number with me. I didn't speak with him directly, but left a message stating I had seen and read the order. I asked him to call me back so we could discuss this further. Well, 7 days later, and I'm still waiting. Thank you for shedding light on this situation. And basically, this is why you should check into things. And so a lot of times people write to me and they'll say, well, I heard you report this, this, and this. And then I posted it or I told somebody and they said that. Well, I'm reporting, right, in this case, I think it's really important to report information from the State Department of Health, the Centers for Disease Control, World Health Organization, right from their sites, all right? And the language just could not be more clear. So you can do this kind of research on your own too. And the faster you learn how to do it, the better off you're going to be, because you will truly be able to figure out the truth about anything health related or anything else for that matter once you get good at doing some research. We offer a course in that, by the way. I teach research and writing every year, one time. It's a 9-module course, starts in February, ends in October. And we learn how to research everything from diseases and vaccines and drugs and supplements and diets and how to read the medical literature. And if you ever want to take that course, my email address is pampopper@msn.com. All right, so I want to finish up by, there are some health professionals and public health officials that are starting to come out with some very good common sense information, and I like to finish with some good news. I think that we all need good news in this day and age right now. So I'm going to read this to you. This came from the Provincial Health Officer for British Columbia. This woman's name is Dr. Bonnie Henry. She's a medical doctor. She's an associate professor at the University of British Columbia, has a background in epidemiology, specialist in public health, and preventive medicine. And here's what she has to say. We may have to live with COVID-19 for months or years. Let's not deny it or panic. Let's not make our lives useless. Let's learn to live with this fact. You can't destroy COVID-19 viruses that have penetrated cell walls by drinking gallons of hot water. You'll just go to the bathroom more often. Washing hands and maintaining a 2-meter physical distance is the best method for your protection. If you don't have a COVID-19 patient at home, there's no need to disinfect surfaces at your house. Packaged cargo, gas pumps, shopping carts, and ATMs do not cause infection. If you wash your hands, you live your life as usual. COVID-19 is not a food infection. It is associated with drops of infection like the flu. There's no demonstrated risk that COVID-19 is transmitted by food. You can lose your sense of smell with a lot of allergies and viral infections, and this is a non-specific symptom of COVID-19. So in other words, if those things happen to you, it does not mean you have COVID-19. Once at home, you don't need to change your clothes urgently and go shower. Purity is a virtue, paranoia is not. The COVID-19 virus doesn't hang in the air for long. This is a respiratory droplet infection that requires close contact. The air is clean. You can walk through the gardens and through parks, just keeping your physical protection distance. It is sufficient to use normal soap against COVID-19, not antibacterial soap. This is a virus, not a bacterium. You don't have to worry about your food orders, but you can heat it all up in the microwave if you wish. The chances of bringing COVID-19 in home with your shoes is like being struck by lightning twice in a day. I've been working against viruses for 20 years. Drop infections don't spread like that. You can't be protected by the virus from the virus by taking vinegar, sugarcane juice, and ginger. These are for immunity, and they are not a cure. Wearing a mask for long periods interferes with your breathing and oxygen levels. Wear it only in crowds. Wearing gloves is also a bad idea. The virus can accumulate into the glove and be easily transmitted if you touch your face. Better to just wash your hands regularly. Be smart and stay informed. Live life sensibly and to the fullest. Be kind, be calm, be safe. Dr. Bonnie Henry. And so I think that that's a much more sane and balanced recommendation about what to do in view of all of this. And let's hope that that type of thinking starts to permeate our public health officials here in the United States and begin to become, so they can become a little bit more reasonable. As you know, I put out as some of you know, I put out a newsletter every Monday. I put a lot of things in the newsletter that are better in a newsletter than on YouTube. And so if you would like to subscribe to my newsletter, pampopper@msn.com. And if you're interested in any of the things that I talked about at the beginning of this video, including sessions with our attorney, Tom Renz, and classes that we're offering here, please feel free to send me an email at pampopper@msn.com. Pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy learning the truth about all these issues, and I'll be back to you tomorrow with more news.